Okay, so this is the Finally Seen podcast, and today's guest is someone who spent nearly 3 decades not just teaching, but seeing the magic in every student. Lisa Hales is a recently retired librarian and educator of 28 years who describes herself as a poised but clumsy lover of life's challenges. A reader, a writer, and an illustrator, Lisa is also a servant of God through her mission of uplifting the self-esteem of frustrated students. She sees life through rainbows and ponies and believes literature and art are powerful tools for transformation. I can't think of a more joyful and grounded way to begin this podcast journey. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here. You and I have been friends for, 8 years or so now?
Right. So Sherry Treadway introduced us.
It's such a long time ago, but we've gotten to do some amazing things together. I've gotten to come speak at the library where you worked, and all of those kids that y'all had were just such delightful children. They were so well behaved. It was like, wait, am I actually in an elementary? So what got you interested in being a librarian? Because most people don't actually think, oh, I have to go to school to be a librarian. Like it's a trained position.
Right. I think that teaching ELA as long as I did and loving literature as much as I did and seeing the kids' excitement, I thought, wow, if I could streamline that just into one career path, how amazing would that be? And my sister, maybe 3 or 4 years beforehand, became a librarian, and she was talking about how amazing it was. So at the time, I had Scott Crow as a principal, and I just sat in his office and said, I need your blessing. If I don't have your blessing, I won't do it because I don't want to leave you. But I do want to streamline this. And he absolutely gave me his blessing. And thank God that he did. He's no longer with us, but I do attribute him to the success on this journey anyway.
That's amazing. And if his family hears this, that'll be really neat for them to hear that he's still touching you.
Oh, absolutely.
You described yourself as seeing life through rainbows and ponies. How did that perspective shape your years as a librarian and educator, especially with elementary children?
Well, we all know that education is constant change. I think that they have become synonyms, change, education. And for me, I've always been okay with change.
Wow.
There's a point where when you walk in and maybe it's some bad news, right? And librarians have gotten quite a bit of bad news lately. My philosophy is you just have to go with the flow. And I think that I jokingly say this, that I have rose-colored glasses on, that I see life through rainbows and ponies. But I think that it's helped me, one, adapt to the changes in education, not just being in the library, but for the last 28 years, the changes, but also hopefully set a good example to students who may be having a bad day. And they can see me through as an example, not through, but as an example to them that, there could be worse things. So let's just kind of take a moment. Let's breathe through this and let's just look at whatever sunshine can come through this. And it's just proved to be successful all my years.
I guess they were able to feed off of your energy. They could feel that. Kids are really good about feeling people's energy and really knowing what we're not telling them, but they can feel it.
Oh, absolutely. They're also very good at telling you when you have a hair out of place and when your teeth aren't as white as, like, hey, what's that spot on your tooth? Rainbows and ponies.
I've experienced that whenever Sienna and I will go speak at schools and whatnot, and for those listening who might not know, Sienna is one of my adult children who has primordial dwarfism. So she looks more like someone who's in elementary school. And we were at an event recently and this little girl, maybe 5 or 6, and she kept doing her head back and forth looking at Sienna. And she said, why are you so small?
Oh, no.
And, Sienna, she's dealt with it for so long. She just rolled.
Right.
She said, it's because I have a form of dwarfism. And the kid was like, oh, okay.
And they do. They're curious and then they move on.
Yeah. So, it was just a neat moment where that little girl was very honest, got her answer, and was like, okay, big deal. You're different.
Right. Okay. Let's go.
So let's see. Earlier, we were talking about how this podcast is called Finally Seen, and I wanted it to be named Finally Seen for a variety of reasons, both because I'm a visibility strategist and personal branding person, but personally, I know what it feels like to not be seen and to be seen in rooms, having worked in places where there were lots of men, being the only woman, or going to networking events where I was the only woman, or speaking and I was the only woman. It's like I want women to find outlets to be finally seen. And me personally, I feel like I've been playing small for the last decade, even though we've been on TV, even though we've, had all this worldwide coverage. I personally was hiding behind a little bit of that. And I was letting everyone else's story come forth, but really not telling my own. And that's not actually fair to the world. I have an impact I want to make. And so, like, for example, with my children's book, like the one that you have and that I've used at your library, if I'm not going out and showing more kids that book, they're not receiving that message. That in my book, the message is what makes you different is what makes you perfect. So
Right.
I know that it's really important for you to make the children feel seen. What was something in particular that you felt really helped them feel seen?
I think that maybe feeding on my background, because I did feel in school, I went to a very, very small school. And in my early years, I did not feel seen. And like a lot of maybe not bullying by the definition, but I felt it in my core. And I promised myself that my mission in life would be to be an educator and to help these children who are not seen be seen and lift their self esteem. I actually have the perfect story. There was a little boy who, and at the time, I did not know that he did not feel seen. And we were all in the library, and I thought I heard someone say a bad word from across the room. And I just turned to look to see who did it. And I just gave him eye contact. He thought that I blamed him.
Oh, wow.
And I could see where, because I just looked directly at him. And I don't know if he was in my eyesight or my line, or if subconsciously I did blame him. And he was so angry. And I pulled him over and I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to blame you for that. I heard it. And he said, well, I'm really mad at you. And I said, it's okay. Use all your words. Tell me why. And he said, people blame me all the time. And I'm not a bad kid. And I said, I absolutely believe you. So I wrote him an apology note right there on the spot, and I handed it to him. And this is at the time when we were doing Nurturing Heart, this kind of program. I don't know if you know about Nurturing Heart, but it's very much not giving energy to the negative, but giving energy to the positive. So I was trying to be very positive with him. And in the end of my little fast scribbled apology note, I put, will you forgive me? And I folded it up and he read it. And he's just looking at it like he couldn't believe that I did it. And I apologized one more time. And then he took my pen and he wrote, I forgive you. And I actually still have that note because I think it was a pivotal moment where I needed to watch how I looked at children. You know, they say notify the face, but stop. And, you know, in that moment when I'm like, oh, my kid said a bad word. Okay, is that the worst thing? No. So stop, pause, think about it, maybe look and say, oh, hey, I heard someone say an inappropriate word. Let's not do that. But don't do something that a kid who has not been seen and who feels so inferior feel that he's been blamed for it. So I took complete ownership, and really it changed the way, and that was maybe my second year as a librarian, and it really changed the way that I treated children. So I'm glad that it happened. I'm embarrassed that it happened
Oh,
because I never want to, right. I never want to hurt a child, especially their self esteem. But I'm glad that it happened so that I could learn to slow down and think.
well, and what an amazing gift too for him to receive an apology from an adult. Because a lot of times, especially when they're in the elementary age, they get blown off like, "Oh, you'll get over it."
Right.
And you never know what's going on in their home life to where maybe that is the thing that breaks their back. You just
Yes.
very, very cool. Um, so I know I've seen some of the stuff you've illustrated and written before. And what got you interested in illustrating and writing and all of that?
I have always just had this out of the box imagination. And maybe that's why I didn't fit in really well in school. Although I'm kind of not regretting it now. But I think that I often joke with people, if you could live in my brain, there would be a party every day. You would never be bored. It's never a dull moment. And I think that I live and I imagine and I dream so vividly that it's something that I just want to get out on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And just 2 summers ago in Colorado, I took a watercolor course.
Cool.
And I thought, okay, I almost didn't do it because I didn't think I could. I'm like, oh gosh, painting, that's so hard. I mean, I've drawn, but painting, and oh my gosh, it's just like it was this revelation inside of me that I could do this. And watercolor is very forgiving.
Mm.
So you can be imperfect. And I'm such a perfectionist that I think that's why I thought I couldn't do it. But it's water and it flows, kind of like my brain.
I love
It's
that.
improved like my brain. So I have now, well, the children's book that I sent you that I did illustrate, I am going to re-illustrate it in watercolor.
Oh, great. Oh, wow. Awesome.
Because it had, I used kind of mixed media in it because I did some on the Surface tablet and then I did some by hand. And I think it just didn't really meld well with the flow of the book. I think the illustration took away from it.
Okay.
So I think that maybe having the watercolor will give it a better picture and help the story flow like the watercolor will flow. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah. And I think too, if you were to change it to the watercolor, that's going to stand out more so than from all this AI. I can't tell you how many AI illustrations I've seen in these children's book groups. And I'm like, guys, stop. I love AI. Don't get me wrong, but I don't like it for that.
Exactly. Yes.
Like we use AI tools at our agency all the time. We lean into them, but when appropriate.
Yes. Yes.
So let's see. You kind of made me think too. Do you do illustrations for other people as well? Or is that something you're open to if you haven't?
I have done some. I have just recently just taken, and they're just dollar store white plates that have some kind of imperfection. And then I draw on them with Sharpie.
Cool.
And then bake them. And so I've done a few of those lately. But for my retirement party, instead of writing thank you notes, I did thank you notes on, I did.
Oh, cute.
Bookmarks. So on the back of them, I did actually write the thank you note. But, people will tend to toss thank you notes after a while. But I thought, well, maybe if it's a bookmark, and how appropriate, librarian bookmark.
Exactly. Well, and I use bookmarks, like actual bookmarks.
Right. There's something about the feeling of the real book. I mean, I love my tablet, but I also love the feel of the book and the cracking open, of the very first person. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because there's a term for that, like bibliosity. I've looked it up before.
You have to go look it up. I like learning, words that are not used that often. So
Right.
So I know I've, like I mentioned earlier, I've come to your school a couple times and gotten to talk to the kids both about writing and actually read the book to them. I just remember seeing their eyes light up, and they always had such great questions. Was there a particular time when you had a child and you were able to maybe steer them toward a particular book, and that's what kind of helped them?
Absolutely. I have had so many reluctant readers,
Mm.
and they would say, "You don't have anything in the library that I like." And of course, I have, like 15,000
Yeah, thousands and thousands.
books, right? And I would just sit and talk to the student about the interest. And then I would say, well, wait a minute. What about, and I can usually get them if they're just about beginning chapter book readers, maybe just a little bit over the beginning. I can always get them with Magic Treehouse or Jeannie B. Jones.
Mm.
And maybe they just didn't know about it. Or Ivy and Bean has been a popular one. So just taking them actually to the stacks and pulling several books and saying, maybe read a page or two. And I've even kept them after library if the teacher gave me permission just to take them, just to keep them for just a little bit. And once they found that series, oh my goodness, then there was no stopping them.
Aw, I love that.
And it kind of goes back to, because believe it or not, I did not like to read until my sophomore year in high school. And it was a teacher who read A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle.
Oh, good one.
And he changed his voice with all the witches and with Charles Wallace and Meg. That moment just opened this whole new avenue. I don't think I would be here today without that teacher and without giving that birth of the love of reading and seeing that, oh, wow, the imagination that comes from these books. And that's what I really want to tell the students. And what I did tell the students, use your imagination, find something that you can't put down. And it's been fairly successful.
That's awesome. I love it. And, I saw a recent study saying just how bad off our children are reading wise. And so to think that it's just gotten worse, the pandemic was not good for our children. And
Right.
we have all the tablets, and there are big news stories about the new PS or place, whatever the new Nintendo game is.
Right.
That's what it is. But let's talk about a book coming out. Like, come on.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So, I'm so excited that there are people like you out there who are not just shoving, just go try this book, but actually diving in, seeing like, let's see what we can find, because there is something for you out there. So,
Right.
what have you seen when it comes to like, once these children learn to read, like how the rest of them is shaped? Because I know that reading is especially good for emotional intelligence, because they get to see the characters kind of in their emotions and learn the causes and whatnot from them.
Right. And I think it also, so what I see is it building vocabulary, of course, but when they can discuss with another child, like they finally get it. They get what reading is all about. And there's a kindergartner who's discussing with another kindergartner about a book. And we have at the school where I taught big clear touches. So it's interactive.
Mhm.
So I always use the book. I would get it through Sora or Libby. You probably know it through Libby Overdrive. But so I would put the book, and it's gigantic, and they can go up and they can see all these pictures. But when they grasp that concept of reading and imagination, and they could go to that book and show what they're talking about, it was magic. So I'm so fortunate that we have the technology that we did. And I know I said I love the touch of a real book, but when you have 25 kindergartners, sometimes, and they always say, you didn't show me the picture, I can't see. Like, you can see that 72-inch screen behind me.
Yeah. That's true. Because I remember when I would do book readings prior to those things being available, it's like, I had to make sure I showed everybody.
Right, exactly.
It's a little hard just to wait, where was I on the page? So that's really cool. That's great. So this kind of made me think, a lot of my audience, obviously with me working with authors a lot and just being a book nerd. I mean, I was reading biographies and autobiographies at like 12 years old. I remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a giant nerd. I think I was a closet nerd, but
Right.
So I was constantly reading. I always had a book with me. So I think I just naturally attract other people who also like to read. But I have a lot of authors who ask, how do I get in libraries? What makes a librarian actually like a book?
I think one, nostalgia for that librarian, especially a book that's going to, I mean, obviously, it's what, you go into a store and you automatically, your eye goes to what you like
Right.
until someone says, oh, but let me show you this choice. So, and that opens up other avenues. But definitely the genre. Uh, Also, I think once you really get to know your students, you start to seek out books that they may have talked about, because we have such a process now with the House Bill 12 and now 13. There's such a process that you have to go through to ensure the safety of the children in all grade levels. But because I had EC through fifth grade, I had to be very careful about what I ordered, what I recommended. Um, it, it got pretty difficult there in the end, even with the graphic novels, because students just gravitate toward the graphic novels. I would promote them. I have such bad ADHD that I cannot follow a graphic novel. I mean, I need the paragraph just right there. I don't know which way to go with the graphic novel. But it got to the point where I had to really watch for the appropriateness. And what may be appropriate for fifth grade is not appropriate for second grade.
Right.
So it was kind of a hard decision to sit there and say, oh, okay, you're in second grade. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to check this book out to you. Or maybe with the parent approval, because there's such a fine line between being responsible for what a kid reads and being responsible for what a kid reads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because you're not you're not the parent, it's like, but you do have some sort of guidance that you're trying to. It's like, yeah, you have a very fine line to walk there. I don't envy
Right.
you on that one.
Right.
And, I mean, we're in Texas, so it's a little bit easier, but having a, strong faith background and base, how did that get challenged being in a public school? Did you feel like you had to do things like a kind of against what you wanted to ever? I mean, again, I know we're in Texas, so it might be a little easier, but.
So where the school district where I was, I feel was very, very supportive of books. We obviously had to pull many from the shelf after the House bill came out. But I also
didn't have a choice after that.
Right, because we didn't have a choice. And we kind of got ahead of it right before it happened, because our school board, our board of trustees, our superintendent are on top of things. And I feel like that's why so far we have kept our librarians. But getting back to the question, when we had to pull particular books, I was it hurt my heart to have to pull some, but it also, it's kind of like my beliefs growing up may have gone against some of the books that were in the library, but maybe these needed to be there so that other children could understand different avenues of life. So sometimes I did have to put my faith aside and just allow these. I mean, now these books are out, and that was hard. That was a hard decision. Well, the decision was made for me, but it was hard knowing that I have some very good friends who have chosen one avenue, and by pulling books, it's like saying, "Oh, well, you're bad."
Right.
You're
Right.
wrong.
Yeah. Obviously, you don't want any child to ever feel like that.
Right. But then what is the age in which it's appropriate to introduce, different avenues of life? And also there was one particular instant, and it was so pretty. It was just, I was reading a book, and it was, I wish I could remember the book, but it was just beautiful illustrations, and it had the sun And in the end, everything worked out beautifully. And one kid raised his hand and he said, "Oh, that means that the sun represented God." And it was so powerful in that moment. But then also in that moment, I'm thinking, could I answer this?
Mm.
Being in a public school. So I praised the kid on his interpretation, and I kind of went on, not addressing it any more than that. But also, that's just imprinted in my brain now, that the sun, because it was so beautiful in the end, that he thought that represented God. He taught me that day that we can have many different interpretations of even illustrations.
Right. That's true. That's neat. That's a neat memory to have. Man, I bet being there 28 years, you have a lot of memories.
I do have lots of memories. Yes.
I mean, there had to have been hundreds of kids that came through there, huh?
I was just thinking the other day, I was trying to think of how many students that I've had, and I'm sure I'm certain it's in the thousands. But, when I taught middle school, 6th grade, we had double blocks. So I would have about 100 kids. But I also taught 7th and 8th grade. And at one point I taught high school. Those are some memories. I didn't last but a year in high school. First year, by the way, 23.
I don't envy high school teachers. No.
Yeah, that was not my forte. It's okay. We can all admit to failure. But, just hundreds of students over 28 years.
A long time.
It's been a lot.
That's amazing, though. To stay in one career as well for that long is pretty impressive, because a lot of people will change careers. I mean, myself included,
Right.
I've been doing what I'm currently doing for about 17 years now, but I did other things before. So for you to have 28 years in there is pretty amazing.
Thank you.
I guess this kind of leads into the AI type of thing, but how do you think children's books have kind of evolved over the last 28 years?
I think because the books that I tend to stick with in the library, I haven't seen a lot of the new AI coming out. And also, it's such an arduous task now to order books and the process that you have to go through, that the last 2 years, I used the budget money on furniture for the library, because it's the hub. It's right there.
Right.
You're an official. So when people walk in, I wanted the library to look very nice. So I think that I haven't necessarily experienced the AI as much as maybe some librarians who are maybe in the secondary realm. My books were still, princesses and kings and, anything with trucks.
Of course, gotta have the trucks.
Right.
Dinosaurs, probably. Dinosaurs for sure.
Oh, dinosaurs. They were well loved. The dinosaur books in the end kind of looked like dinosaurs had gotten a hold of them. So
That's funny. I can see that. Yeah. Looking back at some of my books, I still have all of my Babysitters Club books.
yeah,
That entire series, I still have them, and they look very worn. I definitely read those over and over again.
right.
What would your dream children's book look like if you were to be able to fill the library with your dream set of children's books? What would that look like?
It would be overcoming adversity.
Ah,
Anything adversity, overcoming self-esteem, overcoming poverty, overcoming bullying. And I think that you can do that on any realm, because you could use any type of character. You could use a truck. Go back to the little engine that could, right?
yeah.
Which just really started it, I think. And children still refer to it these days. They still know that little engine that could. But I think that ideally it would be, yes, overcoming adversity.
Okay, that's good to know. So all the authors out there who are thinking of doing a children's book, like, all right, find something on adversity.
Yes.
And you're right, because I think a lot of times we don't realize just how much children have to overcome aside from learning and, social awkwardness and things. Like, they have stuff at home they're getting, going over, or overcoming rather.
Right. And we have, and I'm very, very drawn to students with autism. And I think that their adversity, whether they know it or not, they have to overcome so many social issues and cognitive issues and frustration that even books that would be worded to help children with autism and just help them see that maybe if they don't know they're dealing with adversity, just showing them again the rainbows and ponies, that we can all overcome whatever it is.
You say that, and that's one of the things that I've always noticed with Sienna. While she's not on the spectrum, her particular diagnosis often manifests like someone who's on the spectrum with the social anxiety and, some of the social cues and no filter and not being able to look in the eyes, those sorts of things.
Right.
Tired of overpriced energy drinks full of junk? Same. That's why I use Babella, a self-carbonating hydration packet that gives you clean energy, electrolytes, and vitamins without the crash. Just add water, shake, and sip. It's way more affordable than typical energy drinks and way better for you. Use code Chrissy Bernal 15 at checkout to get 15% off at drinkbabello.com. Hydration just got an upgrade.
Earlier, you mentioned just how challenging it was for you to order books. So does that mean someone who has a new book coming out, is it just completely hopeless for them to think they can get it into the library?
No, but what we do, so we look at if you go to any like Tidal Wave, Bound to Stay, no, do we use Bound to Stay Bound for this? We look at these tags.
Okay.
And we look at the age level, like the recommended age level. So what is happening, say in my particular school, it went through 5th grade, right? So if we had a book that was rated age level, say 5th through 8th, well, obviously we have 5th graders, right? But that book could not be in the library because it needs to reach more like 3rd through 5th. So two grade levels. Also,
so yeah, just making sure you don't kick yourself out automatically.
Right. Romance. We've had to really watch the romance. I love Meg Cabot. Love her. Seeing her in person, have her book signed. But some of hers, because they dealt with, like the Princess Diaries, right, and kissing in the end. So those type of books we have to be really careful about. And then anything that at this point, and this is a big part of the House Bill 12, and now this 13 that's come out, is LGBTQ. We, in the elementary, now in the middle school, it's a little bit different. In the high school, it's different as long as it's not rated adult. But in the elementary, we did pull anything with a tag with that, which even included Patricia Polacco, her children's book about families. And there was one page with 2 moms.
Oh, so you had to pull, even though it had just that little bitty.
Just that little. And even the Neil Patrick Harris, there was a book, The Magic Misfits. So there was one page that it mentioned 2 dads, but not in a context. I mean, it could have been a dad and a stepdad. But because it had 2 dads, and I may not be quoting that exactly right, but it was in the library.
It illustrates the challenge that y'all had in trying to make sure you're not breaking the law or whatever.
Right. And I think that probably my district, we want to be safe, obviously more safe than sorry. So we did end up probably pulling more than we had to. But we didn't want anything in our library with the tag of romance, critical race theory, of course.
So I think especially in Texas now, it was only in Texas that this particular bill was passed, right? So other states are, I guess they have their own laws.
Yeah, I guess so. And I should be more knowledgeable. I probably could not argue politics out of a paper bag, even if I had cues.
That's not what you got into being a librarian.
Right. I got to share the word, right? And now I'm like,
I get it.
wait,
So
something political. I don't know.
well, and I don't like to get into politics either. And so sometimes when it unfortunately bleeds into, and you're like, I wasn't trying to get into all this. So it does bring up a good point for people who want to go speak at elementaries and whatnot. So they need to make sure their books are rated up to 5th grade or 6th, or, whatever their respective grades are. And make sure to watch out for all those tags. Like, actually look at the laws before you write your book.
Right. Look at the laws. And this was back. So one of my favorite books is by Jordan Sonnenblick. Jordan Sonnenblick is with the LGBTQ, although you didn't see it in his book at all, but he came to speak at one of the schools where I taught. And there was this, kind of a moment there where it was like, is he saying too much? Kids started asking questions, and nowadays I know that wouldn't fly at all. This was back several years ago.
I feel like it's both helpful for parents maybe who are thinking, I'll probably go back to I'll probably ask you what you wish parents might do on the reading wise.
Right.
But this is helpful for people who are like authors, and trying to figure out, because I get that question a lot. I want to get in libraries or I want to get in Library of Congress. And my book is in Library of Congress, but that's because it's Barbara Bush Foundation did something with it back in 2017.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I had no idea. My mom's the one who told me. She's like, did you know your book's in the Library of Congress? I was like, no, cool.
Wow.
How did you balance structure and creativity? Because I know as a librarian, obviously you've got the Dewey Decimal System and there's structure there.
Right.
To be creative. So were you able to kind of show them the library can be both things?
I did. A lot of times with the Dewey Decimal, I would pull groups of books for my littles when they would come in, because my lessons followed a curriculum, the teacher's curriculum. So I would look at their long range planning document, and then I would follow their curriculum, but then get to kind of put my creative twist on it. Right. So a lot of times I would pull the books and put them on the table and explain, okay, here's a table of nonfiction, here's a table of fiction, and then try to maybe parallel them. So if we were studying zoo animals, then I could put actual zoo animals from the Dewey Decimal System in there from the 500s, but then also go to the E fiction, which is everybody fiction.
Okay.
And pull out, my favorite little zoo animal books. So toward the end, I tried to more genreify things, because it did get complicated and it did confuse kids, because 398.2 in the Dewey Decimal System is fairy tales. And then what do we tell people? What do we tell kids? The Dewey Decimal System is in the nonfiction section, right? But they're like, wait a minute, Cinderella's not real. And it was very hard to explain to elementary students.
I'm having a hard time getting it.
Right. And 741.5 is graphic novels. Again, Dewey Decimal System, graphic novels. I mean, there are some biographies that are graphic novels, but that's like in the 921s. So what I did was I just pulled all of my mythology, my folk tales, my fables, the fairy tales, and I pulled all of the graphic novels into another section.
Okay.
And I just explained, okay, these are in the Dewey Decimal System, but these are fiction over here. So it was complicated, but that was the only way I could think to, try to separate that. But a lot of libraries now are moving away. They're more genreifying and putting them in buckets, forward-facing buckets, kind of saves the books a little bit, helps the students not just tend to go to one section, which I had trouble with. They just wanted to go to one section and fight over the books.
Oh, okay.
Maybe open up some more avenues of, like, hey, let's get out of your comfort zone and try to maybe read something else.
When you said that about the forward-facing buckets, it
Mhm.
made me think about how we all say, don't judge a book by its cover, but yet we all do.
Oh, I'm so guilty, so guilty. But I do tell kids not to give up, like at least 3 chapters. Don't give up on a book. Read at least 3 chapters, and then you're going to, if by the 3rd chapter, maybe you're just not having it and you have to quit. Okay, I'll let you, but I still don't think you should ever give up on a book.
I've had those books where I have gotten about halfway in and I'm still not quite feeling it, but I feel so invested that I'm like,
Yes.
we'll see it through.
Right. I'm like, hey, I've spent this much time. And then one of my favorite books of all is The Giver by Lois Lowry. And in my opinion, just at the very beginning, it's a little bit slow. But then, boy, you hit that 3rd, 4th chapter and you're going, what? And I probably have read that whole quartet. I'm embarrassed to tell you how many times I've read that quartet. I have memorized the first page of it.
Wow.
Of the first, of The Giver.
Impressive for sure. Wow. So when it came to the covers, did you see that children gravitated toward particular types of covers?
They gravitated toward color. It was color, maybe not the picture, but color. A lot of pink, and boys too. I mean, the pink seemed to be the color. And then I would say second would be blue and baby blue.
Interesting.
They really went toward that. So a lot of the bold type colors, they would go over, but those pastel type books,
Interesting.
That's where they landed.
Huh. What kinds of questions did they ask you about books after they read them?
They would ask me a lot about the illustrations, like why is this here? They would, but the best question ever that I would get is, do you have another book like this?
Okay. Nice.
Is there a series book? I want one just like this. Or they would just check out the same book over and over until I would finally say, friend, other people want this book. And also you're 5th grade. You've got to quit checking out Piggy and Gerald. Or Elephant and Piggy. I don't know if you're familiar with those books, but they are precious.
But it made me think of Are You My Mother was
yes.
That one was on repeat, I remember. I probably still have it because I have books everywhere. And my dream house will have a giant library in it.
That's what we're getting ready to build here in the next several months. And, we're having to downsize. So it's not going to be the 3,500 square foot home. It's going to be a barn dominium.
Oh, those are really cute.
They are. I'm excited. But my husband said 1,600 square feet. That's it. And I said, but can I still have an office with bookcases? And he said, you can just get books online. And then I'm like,
oh, yeah, he just stabbed you in the heart.
Yeah. I'm like, are you trying to kill? My soul just left me. Anyway, I'm sure I'll get my way.
That's one thing that I tell authors a lot of times. It's, if you're trying to get into some of these bookstores, like mom and pop bookstores, and go speak at these libraries and whatnot, don't say your book is only available on Amazon, or don't just go to Amazon, because that's not what they want to hear.
Right.
It's like even myself, I'm so happy that TikTok has brought back a love of actual books, and Barnes and Noble is building more physical locations because of it. That is so exciting. I can't remember, or I can't tell you how fun it is. I remember going on a Sunday afternoon, go to Barnes and Noble, grab a book, some coffee.
Right. It's like you're Mecca, right?
Yeah. I still even if I'm not reading a book, just sitting there and people watching what other people pick up, what books people are gravitating to. And Maybe that makes me weird. I don't know.
No, when I went to New York, maybe 3 years ago, my daughter and my son-in-law lived there. But you would think that my first landmark would be maybe the Statue of Liberty, perhaps the, Ground Zero. No, it was a bookstore. It was the largest. So there are two, there's the largest Barnes and Noble, I believe, but there's also a small bookstore, and you just walk in and it's got the old hardwood floor. I mean, it's old.
Oh, nice.
And when you walk, you're going, oh, those shelves are going to fall at any second. But then you spend 5 hours.
Yeah.
And they're
awesome.
Just breathing in the must. So
awesome. And I like actually talking to the authors and learning the stories behind them. Like we have one author of ours, Denise Clannon, and she wrote a young adult romantic mystery. She's an accountant by day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you'd never think that. But she started writing to deal with the grief of losing her brother to this really rare disease called NF2. And she just found that getting her imagination out on paper and kind of letting the characters feel the grief helped her heal. And just knowing that story, I'm like, that's really cool. If I had just picked up that book, I might not have ever known that. And now I have a more, stronger connection with the book, knowing that story behind it.
Yes, 100%. I think that even learning about some of my favorite authors, when I'm reading like Patricia Cornwell, I'm thinking she really knows a lot about being autopsy.
Her search history is
a medical examiner. Thinking, gosh, this vocabulary. Well, that's because she is one.
So she really knows. Yeah.
So it's authentic. I'm like, this is the most authentic writing I've ever read. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. And you said something about the dealing with the grief. So I'm 10 chapters into a young adult book that I'm hoping now in retirement I will sit down and finish, but I think that writing it, yes, you relive it, but it's so cathartic and it's almost like closure, because there are certain things that you will never get closure on.
Right.
And through writing, maybe that's God's way of just giving you that closure, because if you're not physically going to have the ability ever in your life to get the closure, the keyboard is it.
That makes total sense. And I can see that myself, because I have about 36,000 words into one of my novels. I've rewritten it multiple times, once in fiction, once in nonfiction, and I've toyed back and forth. And I don't know if you know who Patsy Claremont is. She's written, I don't know, probably 40 books. And she's a big women's speaker, but because she's written so many books, she would do these workshops. And I went and did a workshop with her in Nashville. This was prior to Sierra being in Nashville, so it's kind of a serendipitous moment.
Oh, wow.
So, and I ended up becoming friends with Patsy's daughter-in-law. They're very lovely, but I just remember I couldn't decide if I should keep it fiction or nonfiction, and because it's based off of what happened in my early 20s. And many people actually don't know the story of my early 20s. But even writing it in a fiction manner has helped me kind of close some things up, and honestly made me remember some things that I didn't realize I had forgotten, but needed to remember so that I could move on.
Yes.
So it's an interesting process to actually write, even if you're writing fiction based on real things. So interesting.
And with mine, I've toyed. So I've written it in first person point of view, and I've written it in third person point of view. And I've definitely been more successful in the first person point of view. However, I feel like it needs to be told in third person. And I'm writing it kind of in a prose way, Ellen Hopkins, and it just flows. And it's kind of like a stream of consciousness. like I can't put this down, and I'm in. Maybe I need therapy after your book, but in a good way. So I'm trying to emulate that style of writing, and it's just like I say, it's given some closure, and I think that by the last chapter, I can literally, no pun intended, close it out.
Yeah. Wow, that's really powerful. That's really neat. And it's such a gift that God gave you the ability to write so that you can do that. And yes, I know everyone needs an editor, but you still have to start with being able to write.
Oh yes, and I'll definitely. I mean, I'll go back over it, going, "What in the world? What did I mean here?"
Oh my gosh. I bet you I haven't looked at that manuscript in probably 2 or 3 years. I bet if I were to go over it right now, I'd be like, oh my gosh, Chrissy. But that's something I tell authors a lot of times too. You're never going to have a perfect manuscript. Even if 3 other people look at it, it's like even the books that are published by the top 5, those are not perfect manuscripts. Those are not perfect covers. Like there's no such thing as perfection. You will always find something you want to change. So, I just say that you make a decision, you go with it. So,
Well, and to and this is a mistake that I made in the writing as I was going back over. This is a whole separate novel I've started to. Apparently, I don't finish things anyway. So, and it was set back in college, and it really did happen. This thing that I was writing about, except that I'm such like a in college. I was so good. Like I was writing about smoking pot, which I have never, but at that time I had really never. I mean, like I didn't know anything about it. And my character, this is so embarrassing. So in the scene, she sat down and she smoked not one, not two, but 3 joints. Okay.
you
But I didn't know. So I guess, the whole point is if you're telling a story, know your story. Like know the things.
just research. Yeah.
Do some research and I don't even know how I discovered that 3 joints would probably kill you.
Oh,
Or, I don't know, maybe I started watching more movies with pot in it. I don't know how I discovered it. But anyway, I went back and switched it to, she just took like a little,
little hit.
yeah, a little bit, not 3 whole joints. Stop.
It's like I just kind of teased with it earlier about the search history. And I know that all the things I've written about in my career, because I've been writing since before college, like for actual things, whether it be newspaper articles or whatnot. And I know that after the invention of Google, that my search history is real crazy.
Oh, I had, yes, and it's a lot of times on your phone, off the internet, like I'm just going to use my unlimited data to go ahead and look this up because
Yeah.
otherwise,
We kind of went on a tangent from children's book to now pot, huh?
oh yeah, well, told you I'm a rabbit chaser.
You know what? That's why I love conversations that you never know where it's going to go. And that's kind of the best kinds because sometimes the juiciest nuggets come out of them. And you never know what that person who's listening needs to hear. And they're just hoping to hear. And we might not have planned on saying it, but it gets said and they're like, that's what I needed.
Right.
So I know. And you can hear the same thing sometimes so many different times, but when one particular person says it in a particular way, it's like, ding, I get it now.
Yes.
So
yes, I agree.
that's why I'm like, if a rabbit hole begins, we go with the rabbit hole. So,
Right.
well, now that you're retired, so you're going to have time to finish those books, hopefully. So you've got I guess those 2 books. What else are you going to try and finish those up, or do you have something you're looking to start first as well?
No, I'm going to try to finish those. But what I would really like to do is go ahead and reillustrate the completed children's book and then reach out to you. And
I know where to send you.
Okay, perfect. Because I talked to my husband and I'm like, I need to hire someone because I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, honestly, that's how I got into all this, is because when my children's book came out, my publisher told me not to do my own publicity or marketing because it would look vain. So I didn't. Neither did he. And so my book flopped.
Oh,
And
no.
it felt awful. I did not want to make money off the book. That wasn't my goal. I wanted to go speak and get it in the hands of children. That was my main goal.
Yes.
Which is why even to this day, I give them out a lot, because again, my point with the book wasn't to make money. I wanted to make a difference. So, but still, it's not cheap to get them all edited. And even if you go with a traditional publisher, it still costs you a lot of time, a lot of money just in trying to figure out, okay, let me have this person read it. Or maybe I'm going to pay an editor before I send it to the traditional publisher, or going to all these conferences to find literary agents and talk to people. I mean, it's a lot of time and money. So when it flopped, that really hurt. And it really, it pissed me off, really, because I trusted the publisher to help me make an impact, which is why I tell authors now, even if you don't hire my agency to help you, please let me know who you're looking at going with so that I can tell you whether or not they're going to actually give you what you pay for. Because, a lot of people, they see hybrid publishers and they think, oh, scams, it's just a printing press. Well, no, there are printing presses, which they have their place too, depending on what your goals are. But a hybrid publisher that actually acts more like a traditional publisher is going to give you what you pay for, because they're going to handle your book with care like a traditional publisher, actually probably better than a traditional publisher. Sorry, traditional publishers. But, I know those traditional publishers are just so huge, and they're, we've got so many we're working with. But so, you're right. Like, yourself. Yeah, sure, you could go and just put it on Amazon, but I know you don't want to just have a book to have a book. You're trying to make a difference as well. So
I am. And because the children's book actually happened, I was really inspired by your book. And I used, even this particular past school year, I used your book. We were talking about, genre is not coming to traditional literature. And I'm like, wait, this really did happen. And this is true. This is illustrated. So I used your book. And then I showed the picture of the Guinness Book of World Records. And I think that just having that parallel there, that my students felt that they knew you and your daughters and your mom, who was in the book. Mm-hmm. And they just, I don't know, the ladybug. They love the ladybug.
And I still love ladybugs. When I see them in my garden, I'm like, hello, ladybug.
Oh, yes.
They're funny. So for people who haven't read my children's book, it's about Sienna going in the cabinets and she rescues a bird. And, while obviously the bird doesn't talk and ladybirds don't talk and things like that. So we obviously, fictionalized aspects of it. Hiding in the cupboards was something Sienna would do often, and probably still if she wasn't 26.
Right.
But so, I took a real event and turned it into a fun story that we could use to help kids learn a lesson without realizing they're learning a lesson. So.
And they did. And then you asked earlier about kids asking questions after they read a book. Now they wanted to know all about, Sienna. And then I showed them a picture of Sierra and her, the avenue that she took. And they were just so amazed, and they wanted to hear a song. And and of course, the mermaid aspect, they wanted to see that. So which reminds me, I did paint a mermaid bookmark for Sienna.
Oh, so I love that.
I'll mail it to you. And
she actually wrote a book and she's waiting on me to edit it. I should probably actually just outsource that to another editor now that I think about it, because I keep forgetting and I feel awful as a mother especially as one that works with authors, but
Right.
and helping her with her other businesses, like her jewelry business. So, yeah, I need to just outsource that to another editor. It's a really good book, but of course, it's about mermaids. And Sienna did indeed write it. I did not write it; she wrote it.
Wow.
I might have helped her if she had an idea on should I go here or here.
Right.
You know, and she's missing parts of her brain. So it's like if she can write a book, like we all can write a book, at least get one started. You know.
Yes.
You were talking about how the kids said, do you have another book like that?
Mhm.
So one of the recommendations I do have with people is, if possible, have your first 3 books either launched at the same time or ready to go right after, because that happens a lot. Even with adult books, people will say, okay, well, now I want more. I need another one, you know,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
have it ready, you know, have it so that at least they know, okay, this one's coming in 2 months. I can wait. I can do it, you know? So yeah, definitely. So
You know,
have the books, get ready for another one to come out.
and maybe that kind of gave me the idea of because the book Haley and Henry being Henrietta, and the rainbow donkey that was the stuffed animal that Haley won. Maybe trying to move on and then writing from the perspective of Henrietta.
I love when authors do that, when they take the
And
same
Mm.
overall story, but from a different, I love when authors do that.
so maybe, and then I could illustrate it all at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I see that. So thank you for that idea. That
Yeah,
just came in. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, where can people follow up with you? You know, when your books come out, where can they find where your information is going to be?
So I have Instagram. I have Facebook. I'm more of a Facebooker.
Is it just
I
Lisa
forget.
Hales on all those platforms?
Yes, it's Lisa Monroe Hales.
Okay. So,
And then I'll just yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
yeah, we'll put that. You do need to get a website, hint, hint.
okay.
At least, you know, nothing complex, but you know, if you can get your name.com, that would be ideal. And then that would at least your face and your books, you know, kind of your little bit of story. Because again, like you were mentioning earlier, when you feel like you get to know the author, you are just so much more invested in them, especially if they're going to have more than one book. And so the author page on having a website and that social media is a great way to start building that relationship with the readers. And you know, even if your book's not going to come out for a year, start now, because it does take a little bit of time. Because you know, I mean, I don't know, think of even Kim Kardashian. Her book came out, but she'd been on TV for so long that she already had a built-in audience. Of course it was a bestseller.
Right.
So yeah, start building your audience now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I will.
You're welcome. Well, I am so happy that you joined me for the, launching Finally Seen, and you've got so many wisdom, so many nuggets of wisdom in there for both authors and parents. And I guess any last words that maybe we forgot to cover that you want to make sure you share?
Just making sure that anyone can be seen, even being seen, hiding behind books. I've seen a lot. I think that it just takes one person to pull you out, just like it took Dr. Richard Parrish for me to pull me out of my shell. And I still hide. As much of a social butterfly as I am, I do have a lot of anxiety in crowds. But just going back to, he shared, I had written a paragraph. It was an assignment, 10th grade. Didn't think anything of it. And he shared my paragraph and he said, "This is writing." Those words, that's when I was seen. And
like, I'm a writer. Wow.
Right. And I would have never even thought about that. I would have never thought that I was good enough. The self-esteem was so low before him. And just being that person in someone else's life.
So it sounds like he tried to be intentional about making kids feel seen and pointing out, like, this is writing. So being intentional about trying to help children feel seen.
Absolutely. And he passed away just last year, but I reconnected with him for years and years and years. And I've written him so many things, and we were connected on Facebook. So I did get to say thank you to him for helping me be seen. So I know he's up there, and I promised before he passed away that I would do it. I would finish these books, and that I would one of these days be an author, whether it's a published author or just finishing a book.
Well, now you've said it to the world. So now the intention is out there and you got to do it.
Okay, I will.
We are all going to be rooting you on, and I am going to as well. And you can always ping me if you're like, I'm stuck. What do I do? So,
Okay.
And I guess I will wrap this up, and we'll put your information in the show notes. And I'm so happy you joined me. And everyone, thank you for listening in. We will see y'all next time on Finally Seen.